Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin. I was so excited to connect with Chris Hancock in this episode. I had the pleasure of experiencing Chris's work a few days before we recorded, and I can attest to the power of the multidimensional divine light transmission. Among other things, I could sense the presence in my field that he was working with, and there were physical sensations and unusual movements on my side that told me something out of the ordinary was taking place. And I go into this more in the episode. It was a gentle process, but also unusual compared to what I'm used to experiencing in meditation. I recommend you experience it for yourself. Chris has fascinating stories and insights to share about his own mystical awakening journey and how he uses spirit to work through him in his work, which we'll get into in this episode. Chris Hancock is a Nashville-based therapist with 26 years of experience and founder of Therapy Outside the Box. Following over a decade of conventional talk therapy, a profound spiritual awakening in 2018 shifted his work toward mysticism, gnosis, and the transpersonal path. Now working in direct collaboration with divine sources of love, light, and God consciousness, including Mother Mary, Chris serves as an initiative of unified divine feminine and masculine hierarchies and co-creator of the Multidimensional Divine Light Transmission Healing modality. Chris offers a unique blend of deep psychological, emotional, and spiritual healing through authentic divine connection, resulting in a mystical alchemical process he calls Transpersonal IFS. So before we get into this, I want to invite you to explore the beautiful array of resources waiting for you at karagoodwin.com. From my book, Your Authentic Awakening, to powerful free meditations, my Learn to Meditate course, and even personalized guided meditations created just for you, there's something there to support you, no matter where you are on your spiritual path. You can also sign up for my upcoming summits and workshops to connect with like-hearted souls and expand your consciousness in real time. And now, enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Chris. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. Thanks for coming on Soul Elevation.
My absolute pleasure, Kara. Thank you.
So let's start by talking about your spiritual awakening and what you experienced in 2018.
Yeah, right. That was the year. Okay. So again, I'm going to try to be as concise because that could be an incredibly long, detailed story, but I'll try to nuts and bolts it. The way I've been describing it is that 2018 was really the touchdown where I was brought to my literal knees after probably a decade of being in what I really just thought was just kind of burnout from work. And it was that.
Work as a therapist?
That's right. Yeah, I'm a licensed therapist, 26 years in. And I began the career in 98, got my degree in 2000, licensed in 2004, been practicing more or less conventionally talk therapy, kind of old school. I've always been metaphysically and holistically minded, always a seeker since high school probably. But in terms of my career, for the bulk of it, up until about 2018, I was doing just more or less conventional talk therapy, individual, one-on-one, and running long-term therapy groups, usually at night, for many, many years. And for about that decade leading up to 2018, really burning out for a whole number of reasons. One was just that my soul was trying to tell me that there's much more for me to be doing. And I was also, I think sort of unconsciously subscribed to the old sort of puritanical ethic of just work harder, show up earlier, stay later, see everyone, right? So I was anything but niche, if you know what I mean. I was a generalist and really just seeing everyone that would come. And I paid a price for that in many ways. So this slow burnout, this sort of insidious burnout, and there were other factors to it too. My wife and I adopted 2 children, which is the most wonderful thing ever. But as anyone knows that's been through that, it's a grueling and long process and expensive and lots of trips. And so all of that was part of just really burning out. But in 2018, it became clear to me that, when I started to have fantasies of chucking it all and just, moving to Florida and open a crab shack and start a completely different life and forget all this healing therapy business. Again, long story short, this is where I realized, I started to intuit that there's more about this that I really need to understand. And there's only going to be really one way through it. And that's to do what I had been always flirting with doing, but never fully committed to, which was just totally surrendering and sitting and meditating and praying and asking for help and clarity. So that's what I started to do. And I went pretty much all in on it because I knew that's, if there's a solution and if there's clarity to be found and a new way forward professionally and otherwise, that was the only way to go within and look up and be open to receive. So I began that in earnest, really in earnest, committed for the first time. And it was not terribly long. And all I was really doing was just showing up, being open to receive, and asking only for clarity because I was exceptionally lost at that time. I really didn't know what was what. Is it just that my career's over? Am I not supposed to be doing this anymore? Is my marriage over? I was so lacking in clarity. So I just decided to focus on just that. Asking for that each day and just being open to receive. And before too long, I think the first thing I started to notice was that my body began rocking, mostly my head, in the infinity symbol, which I noticed right away, and I knew that that was meaningful. And that continued on. It's never stopped. And from the body rocking, which, at first I thought, oh, it's just energy moving. And it was, but it turns out not only that. Then I started to wonder, is this Kundalini? But I'm not an expert at that then or now, but I've worked with enough people who have had a whole variety of Kundalini arousals, emergencies, awakenings, and none of what was going on for me that time seemed to be that. And so I just continued on with it, and then clarity started to come in ways that it's difficult to describe how, until I started to then, I was getting messages, basically downloads. And they were a little faint at first until the one that came through at the very end of a sit one day, probably a couple of months into this commitment, this surrender experiment. And that first download at the very end, I was just getting ready to get up, and all of a sudden, boom, it was, you are being given a gift of holy discernment. That's exactly how it came. And I thought, wow, I know one thing. I didn't make that up because I don't know what that means. Right? So that was kind of interesting confirmation that was something from another source. That was a true download or telepathic message or however you want to think of that. I'd never put those two words together, holy and discernment. I've never seen them written anywhere. People don't seem to be familiar with that as a phrase. But I eventually put two and two together. And it was funny because at that time, I had some of the clarity came that was nudging me, dropping breadcrumbs into my field. And I picked up one of them to follow it into training in a kind of lesser known energy psychology method. It's called Ask and Receive, which grabbed me right away when I saw it pop up on my computer screen. And signed up, paid the fee, started training in that. And that was one thing that was just lighting me up and completely confirming that, okay, this is a new path. This is the beginning of a new path and a new way to expand into where you are to be going, where your soul wants to go in this work and in life. And that method, like many energy psychology methods, use muscle testing in the conventional way, kinesiological muscle testing. So there's different ways we can do that. There's the sort of arm test, the sway test, the finger test, which is really just a way of tapping your inner knowing, your divine spark, to give you truth or to separate truth from falsehood, right? Or to let you know something that is in your highest and best good or isn't, right? And that can be anything at all. So I was already doing this energy psych method with clients and those that were open to try something new. And I think I was just using arm test or finger test to get strong or weak, true or false. And probably a week or so into getting that holy discernment message, I started to notice that while I was doing the conventional testing, my head began involuntarily nodding yes, true, or left to right, no, false, involuntarily, along with the muscle testing. And I thought, that's weird. And again, I know that I'm not voluntarily doing that because I had no thought to do such a thing. I was
Yeah.
just using the conventional muscle testing. So that so I don't know, maybe a week or so into just noticing that phenomenon, and then it became ever present. It was with me all the time, and anytime I would just think intentionally a thought or a question, my body in that way, kind of like a built-in pendulum, would respond. And that's the gift of holy discernment. That was the practical application of it, is what I then put together. And that is what I use ever since then to discern who is with me. So this goes back to the beginning of the surrender experiment with the body rocking and the infinity symbol. I started to realize this is not just energy moving through me. These are higher sources connecting with me to some degree and beginning to work with me. And then using that yes, no, I could kind of make educated guesses about who that might be. And so, what I began to realize in pretty short order from applying that pretty religiously was that Saint Germain was coming in. And I later figured out that he was coming in as kind of a gateway guide, like not to be what my one and only, but as sort of my entranceway into the whole higher realm echelon of unified hierarchies, divine feminine and divine masculine. I didn't know all of who yet. That unfolded over time.
How did you know? How did you pinpoint Saint Germain?
The name came to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wasn't terribly familiar with him. I knew of that name. I sort of knew of the Violet Flame stuff, but hadn't deep dived that at all. But it came to me, so then I started deep diving.
Mm-hmm.
And then so it was Saint Germain coming in, and then I got that Melchizedek and Christ, and then later Mary. More peripherally, so I was still in the incubating early stages of just trying to get the lay of the land of what's going on here. What is this and what is it not, right? So it took quite a while to sort through it. But I guess long story short, what is it, 6, 7 years later, I work with all of these and more. So the whole sort of Marian, divine feminine, the Egyptian pantheon, Isis, Sophia, Sarah Lakali, St. Anne, Mother Mary, Magdalene, mostly divine feminine, but a whole host of the sort of lesser known archangels like Chamuel, Hanael, some of the just lesser known like lesser hierarchy, not the like big four like Michael, Gabriel. Uriel's come in a few times, but that's about it as far as like the top dogs. Because I think those are the ones off kind of fighting the big spiritual battles, whereas the lesser known ones are more available to us, right? Like Rupert Sheldrake humorously said in his book with Matthew Fox about angels, that there are a lot of unemployed angels these days because fewer and fewer people call on them. So if you call on them, they're ready.
Yeah.
They're ready to work. So
They can do our bidding.
no doubt. So it was just the unfolding of beginning to sit and connect with and discern who's coming through to work with me and on different levels. And I could eventually discern what they were doing, what level of my being they were working on with me, emotional, psychological, level of higher self, I am presence, level of DNA, et cetera, et cetera. So whole host of this sort of the supreme beings, holy ones, Christed ones, exalted ones, archangels, ascended masters. I guess it could kind of go on, but the really important thing is not just how this has happened for me, But what I was eventually able to realize I was being strongly nudged to do was to bring these sources into my work. This is what this whole kind of dark night, insidious dark night burnout was all about. It was to get me to the point, because I wasn't getting the message, to wake me up, to make this connection, to get on with at this midlife point. You know, this was around 50, the turning 50, that this all went down. That this was the point where it was time to wake the hell up to what is really the true purpose of your soul, and stop keeping all of your metaphysical spiritual stuff, you know, in the background behind you, out of fear of being seen as a quack and all the usual stuff that professional people would typically be concerned about if they have those interests and they really want to lead with it, right? It's
Mhm.
often a process of coming to terms with that. I think I was pretty dense in not realizing that that was there for me, and that was the true path of my soul. So I had to be kind of slapped upside the head and literally brought to my knees to wake up to it.
Right. Well, and I think it's an important point. The field that you're in it's a
Yeah.
sciency field. I mean, there's of course an art to it,
Yeah.
but it is like part of the medical establishment, and it's part of the academic establishment, and
Right.
those industries historically in the West do not encourage any sort of spiritual connection within the work, and so I can completely understand how that would be frowned upon, and the sort of self-limiting that would come in to be like, well, I don't want to be one of those guys because we've made fun of those guys my whole, like that's not respected, or
Yeah.
that's not embraced. And so there is this like having to go against the grain and really feel it, and really feel passionate about it, and
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
like that to be able to go against the grain. There is that courage that's there, and that like, you know what, even so,
Yeah.
even though I know that I'm putting myself out there in a way that's not going to be supported by everybody, I might be putting a target on myself, at
Yeah.
least psychologically.
Yeah.
um, and
Mhm.
there's a lot to unpack with that decision to keep taking those steps forward. So I can really understand how a dark night of the soul would need to be necessary.
Yes, apparently, and definitely so in
Hmm.
my case. You're right on point with all of that. And all of that was mostly just kind of subconscious for me. It's not that those aren't things
Hmm.
I would dwell on a lot, but I think my soul, my mind, body, spirit was trying to tell me that this path you're on is not working.
Yeah, it's not the
No,
fullness of what
not the
you're here to
fullness.
do.
That's a great way to put
Yeah.
it. Not the fullness, exactly. So one of those early downloads I got, along with that holy discernment one, I can't remember the order in which they came, but there was one in that period that basically gave me that clarity of like, no, your marriage isn't over. No, your career's not over, but it is, you are at a crossroads. You must choose. You can't keep going the way you were going. That's why you're here in this state right now. So your path is to go forward with absolute fearlessness in truth and integrity and authenticity, and put it all out there, right? Like in whatever way feels authentic and organic. But the crux of it was, you cannot hold back. You have to come forth. And the message was basically, the world has been waiting for you to come forth with all of who you are. And not long after that, there was sort of a follow up, which was because I think the higher sources were recognizing that I didn't quite have my legs under me yet to do that so bravely and courageously. And I did get a message that basically said, if you will commit to that, to not reckless abandon, but fearless authenticity with bringing all of this that is now beginning for you forward, watch what happens. You will see that you will be divinely protected. And
Mm.
I can say that 6, 7 years in of putting it all out there, I have been. I've not received any pushback whatsoever. None. No one
That's
calling me
beautiful.
out for being a kook or a fraud or anything like that. I expected it because I know people in my field who go out on the limb because that's where the fruit is in this way, following their calling, and they get ripped to shreds day in and day
Mm.
from the general public. So thank you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Whatever is protecting me and however, thank you, right?
Yeah.
And look, if that
That's
comes, it comes. I'm not concerned about it. I know I'm in integrity. That's all that
hmm
matters, and I'm doing what I'm here to do. But
well, and I know that this journey has, and everything that you described in terms of the body swaying and the infinity with your
mm,
head, and the confirmations that you were getting within the body and learning how to read the body, um,
yeah,
led to the creation of the multidimensional divine light transmission, which I was able to experience a few days ago.
yeah,
So I'm super excited to talk about this
hmm
because you and I were just like, okay, let's do this, let's try it.
yeah,
But I don't really have a lot of, I mean, I read the website, there's a lot of information on your
mhm,
website, but
yeah.
um, it was a fascinating experience for me. And I'd like for you to just talk about how this came about and what it is. And then I can kind of
Yeah.
come in with my experience a little bit and how it was different from a regular meditation for me.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So that's another thing that I did not intend. Once all this started going on for me for the first few years, I had no conscious thought of like, oh, I need to harness these energies and bring it in and share it with people. I really didn't think or know that that was kind of in the divine plan. So again, I think me being a little dense, literally, spiritually, I think I had to get kind of slapped up on the side of the head again with a very strong series of nudges sometime around 2022, I think, that I'm supposed to not kind of covet what's going on for me in my personal communions and meditations and work with these higher sources, but begin to bring it in with those that you already know that would probably be open to it. I can't even tell you how that came, but it just started to come, just an increasing awareness and intuition that I need to start bringing this forward. So that was another example of you got to put it all out there. So it was easy at that point to just to consider two people that were in my practice at the time that I knew would be open to this and were. So we just started to settle into meditation, and I would just do an invocation like I had learned to already start doing in my personal sits. And then we just surrender the session to whatever sources are coming through, have in mind that they know in their infinite wisdom that the person would be able to tolerate, receive, and perceive some form of divine light, energy, healing experience, or even just spiritual presence. So, to kind of make it concise for anyone that's like, what the hell is he talking about? This multidimensional divine light transmission, MDLT for short, is really, I think about it as a co-facilitated mystical experience or something that sets the stage for that great possibility. Or to put it even more simply, you can think about it as a spiritual presence experience, an opportunity to open up to direct connection and contact with any one of the divine emanations of Source Creator, of course, right? Whoever in whatever form that would be. And it's usually, like we talked about earlier, one of the Supreme Being energies, the Marian Divine Feminine, occasionally Yeshua, Melchizedek, any one of the Ascended Masters, or those like lesser known archangels. We also, I've learned to invite in healed and well ancestors, crossed over loved ones, personal guides, spirit guides, like all that are aligned with Christ light, with God consciousness, with pure love and light, source energy, let's just put it that way, are all welcome, right? And so it runs the gamut, right? Everywhere from on one end, people just have a sense of calm, peace, or a little bit of like a blissful experience, all the way to, on the most extreme end, people can go wildly out of body, travel the cosmos, have kundalini arousal awakenings, DNA activations, sort of quasi near death experiences, past life information downloads, all sorts of stuff. Like you and I talked about in the beginning, it's usually something in the middle of those extremes, right? But it's really up to them. It all of like what really happens is way beyond my pay grade. I am literally just like an instrument, a vessel, like a theurgical channel in a way, where I'm just invoking the gods, as they used to say in older times, or the goddesses, inviting them in to make contact, and they set up like a toroidal field, is my understanding, a torus field, spherical field of energy from them through me and through the recipient, and around it goes, and it lasts for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, usually at most. And and then so that's kind of a good description. The name itself was downloaded to me by Saint Germaine at the end of the meditation in that 2022 year, when I was answering the call of the nudge to, okay, yes, I'm saying yes, I'm going to bring this into my work. What should I call it? And at the end of a long meditation where I thought, okay, while I'm asking, I guess it's not going to come today, it came. That was the recommendation of what to call it.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful, and it's really interesting having been through it, because it really was like a joint meditation,
Yeah.
which I am a meditator. I meditate every day, more or less every day.
Right.
I lead meditations, so I'm no stranger to group meditations. And so it really was like this dual meditation. We were just on Zoom, and you were meditating and I was meditating, and we were more or less quiet. You were doing a lot of the movements that you've talked about, and they're pretty dramatic movements as well. It's not subtle.
Yeah.
And
they're fluid. They're not like herky jerky.
Right.
You know, they're fluid, but it is rather dramatic at times. You're right.
Yeah, it's not like, is he moving? That type of thing. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, and there are times where you just kind of stay to one side, and and so it was just interesting from my perspective, kind of noticing what I noticed.
Yeah.
And the first, because we were working with two guides whose presences were there.
Yeah.
And you were, even though we were quiet, you were kind of open to communication. Like, if anything comes up and you want to share it, feel free to share it. You're not going to break the flow or anything.
Exactly.
You were likewise, okay, here's what I'm getting. This is who's coming through, and they're doing this. And so in the beginning, I could feel a lot happening on my left side. And so I was sharing that with you. And it was very palpable.
Yeah.
It was, and again, like I'm no stranger to feeling presence and things like that. So it wasn't like a brand new experience, but it was noticeable, and it was very interesting. And then at some point, I think it was when the next guide started coming in. Yeah, I started swaying, and actually I was doing kind of a spiral. Yeah. And that's unusual. Usually I'm pretty still in my meditations. Right. And I think I could have stopped it. It wasn't like involuntary. But there was such a perception of what was happening. So it was like, I noticed my body was doing that, and I could have chosen to stop.
Right. In other words, this wasn't possession.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't. It was kind of like, oh wait, I think I'm moving, and it even did. It came to mind like, oh wait, I should be still, and then. And then I was like, wait a minute, no, let's just go with this. This is what's happening. Yeah. And so then I was just enjoying that. But that's unusual for me to move in my meditation. Usually I'm pretty stationary. So that physical movement was interesting. Yeah.
And it was the work, I think, for you that day was taking place on your energetic body level, right?
Right.
Your ka, or your energy body level, right?
Yes, that's right.
Like an attunement? Is that how I got that this was for you?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely wasn't working on the physical because that, and maybe you want to talk about that, how different individuals will
Yeah.
have different targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So what you were describing there about how your body was moving in ways that it doesn't typically when you meditate, that's just one example of how people who do this with me, that it's sort of the closest to like evidence that we can get. This is anything but an evidence base. It's not a therapy. It's an experience. It's a phenomenon, and it's not evidentiary in any kind of researchable way. I don't think, nor is it supposed to be. Right? It's a very personal, spiritual experience, mystical experience. Really, is how I think about it. I think that's accurate and authentic to describe it that way. But that is one of the tells, so to speak, is that people feel something, or their body starts moving, or they begin to have memories or images, or I mean, you name it, that they just know this is atypical. This is telling me something is with me and working with me in some way that is for my highest good.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned about the memories. I forgot the memories. But that was another part of it for me. I felt like I went back to a specific age or age
Mm,
range. I think it was between like 4 and 7 years old. And it was just that memories were coming up, and they weren't necessarily difficult memories,
yeah.
but it was like I remember I just could see that my dresser that was in my
Mm.
room at that period, where I know where I lived. I only lived in this one house for between the ages of 4 and 7.
Oh, okay.
And so I could see that room, and I could see the detail like of this dresser in a way that I haven't thought about it ever. I mean, who really takes the time to go back, or at least I don't. I'm
Right.
not going down memory lane and being like, can I remember what my dresser looked like when I was a kid? Um,
Right.
but there were many very benign, kind of neutral memories
Mm,
from that age group, and a dream that has been popping up. There is this dream that
yeah.
has not just in that session, but lately it's like, gosh, that was a weird dream, and it's weird that I still remember it after all these years.
Yeah.
And it was so vivid that I actually thought that I had gone, like, I knew where the physical place was, where I'd kind of gone into the earth, and I went to that place in my waking time to be like, where is that entry point? Why is it gone now? And
Mm,
um, so that it just but anyway, so I had a lot of memories from that like little chunk of time.
yeah.
And because we were working on the energy body on the Ka, or they were working
Right.
on the Ka, that is interesting to note, because there would be a layer of my energy that would be associated with those memories. And the fact that that's what kept
Yeah.
coming up all throughout, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I think I have an indication of, if I knew the landscape better of where I hold my memories,
Right.
like that was some sort of repair, which would make sense. I mean, it was the time that my parents were getting divorced.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of like
Yes.
unacknowledged trauma from that, just from going through that, as everybody who's had gone through a family breakup has things that they may
100%.
not have dealt with yet.
That's right. So you could look at that a number of ways in terms of the context of this MDLT experience. It could be that whichever portion that was, Sophia working with you or Chamuel, I think, right?
Hmm.
Were they stimulating that a memory, a felt sense, and a memory of that time to sort of point you gently to there might be a little more healing to be done
Hmm.
there, or was it more byproduct of the work that they were doing on your energy, spiritual twin Ka level, that just sort of
Kicked it up,
naturally
kind
picked
of.
that up? Exactly. I
Yeah.
guess it would all be toward the same ends of just greater awareness. There might be something there that's tender, that's holding some pain. So that might be a little bit of a segue point, if I may,
Hmm.
to the MDLT experience really is it certainly is a healing experience, so therapeutic in that sense, but it's not a therapy per se. But one of my other main experiential methods, that I use most often with most, is why most people come to me, is to do IFS, or internal family systems, which is AKA parts work. That's how it's sort of colloquial. I can never say that word.
Colloquially,
Yes,
maybe?
you did it. I couldn't get it. That word, that's how it's kind of known these days, as parts work, right? Um, I've been interested in that method since probably 2006. Right away, it felt to me like this is a spiritual therapy. It wasn't recognized, it wasn't put forth that way. Only in these last few years is it really being accepted as really a portal to the inner, not just sort of shamanic landscape, the same territory we go with psychedelics typically, but it really can be a portal to the transpersonal or transdimensional, or opening up to the higher realms. I kind of always knew that. I went in and out of it for many, many years. But when this all started for me, probably around 2020, I picked back up. It just felt like it's time for me to go back pick back up with IFS, with parts work. And as I was beginning to do that with people again, I started to notice my head would rock, and I would use that holy discernment to tell me who's with me. And basically, long story short here, out of that, I've developed what I call transpersonal IFS.
Mm.
So it's where, for those open to it, and it's not everybody, and that's fine, but for those that want kind of the best bang for the buck of a depth therapy, where we can really do some beautiful deep healing of parts of us that are holding old pain, or give protective parts of us that are kind of locked in their hypervigilant protective roles the opportunity to relax and maybe shed those roles eventually. We can also do it with the direct involvement of the same higher sources that come through for MDLT. So Mary's the most common, because she came in kind of as my right-hand woman this past March. So it's almost always her, and sometimes her and someone else. It really depends. But whoever it is, they're just higher sources of pure love, light, and God consciousness that are available for the asking. And in the way that we do IFS, which looks a little different every time, but with the same larger goals of bringing healing and unburdening to burdened parts of our system, and creating more harmony and wholeness, there are times, well, no, not times, basically almost all of the time now, when we invite a higher source in, when it gets to the point in that therapy where any part of us that we're doing some work with is ready, when the part lets the person know that they're ready for some unburdening or unloading of old extreme emotions, old extreme beliefs, or even generational or culturally induced trauma loads, we can, in addition to the normal way that it's done in IFS, where we just offer the sort of menu of, this is directly out of shamanism, the menu of elements to give their pain over to, like to fire, water, earth, wind, light. And I will say, or the part could give it to Mary or Isis or Sophia, who's ever with us. 9 times out of 10, if that person is practiced in this with me, their parts know, oh, that these sources are really powerful and really loving. And when they say yes to that, it's just pure alchemical magic. The healing, the way that they come in to dissolve or hands-on heal the burdens, whatever they might be. It's different every time, always beautiful and magical. So that's, I'm really loving doing that work. I'm a lifer with it. It's in practice, in evolution all the time, and always sort of deepening in terms of the higher sources involvement, for our asking in that healing work. It's like, it's amazing to me that they're all IFS therapists. The higher sources, they know exactly what we're doing, which is validation of really the model of the idea that we all have a larger self, undamaged, eternal, divine spark, the seat of consciousness. That is who we all really are. And we all have parts that are not that essence, but part of the system. One self, many parts is kind of one of the sayings. And all those parts are existing usually in different times in our lifetime, or even past life carryovers. It can get very weird.
I
Very,
love when
very.
things get weird.
Oh, it can get very weird. And again, IFS historically has not really been so keen on talking much about the weird, about how we often discover inner spirit guides that are not parts of us. Then we sometimes discover people have foreign attachments and energies in the system that don't belong, that are usually not demonic per se, but they're kind of parasitic,
Hmm.
these energies that are siphoning energy and trying to exert influence not for the highest and best good of the person.
Hmm.
I have a whole method where when we discover that, as long as the person's ready, Mother Mary comes in. Mother Mary, who is sometimes known in the sort of Catholic exorcist circles as the terror of demons. Where
Mm.
Mary's presence is, no evil wants to be, or nothing untoward can be, because of her just absolute purity and light. That's a very Catholic view. I'm kind of subscribing to it because that's what I'm seeing is true. That when we discover that there's something that doesn't belong and the person is ready to have it compassionately released, it's
Hmm.
always Mary who comes in, and she does so with mercy and love and just ushers them on to wherever they choose to
Mm.
go. They can
Yeah.
go to the light to be healed and forgiven, or if they're not interested in that, they sort of just go to the void, but they can't stay in the person's system.
I love it. And I love that you brought parts work into this
Yeah.
because parts work for me, I didn't even know what that was
Yeah.
until earlier this year. And listeners
Oh,
of the
okay.
podcast will have heard me talk about in previous discussions about the miraculous way that it came in because and I love that you're bringing the spiritual element of it because it is like I read an intro to IFS, which was a gift.
Yeah.
Somebody sent it to me for Christmas, and it sat on my coffee table, kind of off to the side for months
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, okay, it looks interesting, but I got a lot of books, and so I
Right.
just never was never picked that one up,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a fascinating series of events because I had this memory come up, and this was maybe in February of this year. It
Yeah.
might have been January, but I had this, and it was I'm going to use the word traumatic kind of loosely here.
Loosely. Right. Yeah.
It wasn't like deep, deep trauma,
Right.
but it was something from when I was a teenager, and it was kind of typical teenage trauma of just
Mm-hmm.
being left out and embarrassed and kind of targeted and all of
Yeah.
those kind of again, like I think
Yeah.
everybody who's gone through high school has been there.
Sure.
So we're not saying that I, survived something really horrible, but
Right.
these little traumas that we go through within life. And
Oh, yeah.
I like I dismissed this. I buried this memory so deeply
Yeah.
that I literally forgot about it.
Yeah.
And then I can't even remember why. I think actually I was having a multidimensional experience. I was, because I'll have those at night where
Yeah.
visuals will start to come in.
Right.
And I was having this great, seeing these patterns and these, feeling these presences. And it was really, really beautiful. And then bam, all of a sudden I
Wow.
remembered this memory. And
Yeah.
I was like, that was so hurtful. That was
Yeah.
such a hurtful thing to go through.
Right.
I cannot believe I have not thought about that in 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And but my initial response was, "Oh, don't look at that. Put that back where you found it.
Right.
Don't go there. There is a reason that you have not thought about that. You are better off not thinking about that. That
Right.
that's a hurtful memory." But luckily,
Yeah.
I caught myself
Yeah.
because it was such an automatic response of like, put that back where you found it. And then I
Yeah.
was like, wait a minute, I'm afraid of that,
Right.
and it was like, I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. There's something there.
Right.
And so I was like, no, bring it back in here. What happened? Let's really go into it. How does it make me feel now?
Yeah.
And so I was sharing that with a friend of mine well, actually, then the next day I had finished a book and it was evening time and I picked up that internal family systems book because I decided that was the next book I was going to read. I literally had it on my lap. I had it open to the first page,
Yeah.
but there was all this going on in my house
Yeah.
that there were people coming and going, and there was this specific activity around my kids that was kind of funny and
Yeah.
interesting. And there was just kind of chaos.
Yeah.
And so I had this book open, but I kept talking to everybody and never actually read anything from the book. So I still had no idea what IFS was.
Right.
And then I go to coffee the next morning with a friend and I share how this memory came up, and I recognized that I wanted to put it away again and that I was afraid of it.
Yeah.
And that I'm like, there's something there, so I'm trying to uncover it. And she goes, "Oh, this sounds like internal family systems." And I was like, "What?"
Right.
And I'm like,
Didn't
"Tell
just
me
say
what that
that.
is."
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, "Tell me what internal family systems is. Why does it remind you of, why does what I shared remind you of that?"
Yeah.
And so she tells me what you already shared.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "You're not going to believe me when I tell you this."
Yeah.
But I literally had a book open on my lap on internal family systems that somebody gave to me. I didn't even seek
Right.
it out, but I just thought it was time for it.
Yeah.
And now here you are bringing it up. Like, it was this whole, so many full circles. I had a whole flower of life of full circles happening
Right.
with this.
Love it.
And it's been this, 2025 has been a huge invitation for me to deal with the shadow.
Yeah.
And to embrace these parts of myself,
Right.
because this is just one example of how different disparate memories have come up,
Totally.
different things that I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
believe that I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And I haven't focused on the shadow. I've been very much a love and light person.
Mhm.
And let's just focus on what it is that we want. Let's create the reality that we want. Let's not give
Yeah.
energy to the negative things.
Yeah.
And this year has been like, okay, there's actually something for you in what you keep turning away from, what you
Completely.
keep denying.
That's right.
And so I love that
Yeah.
you have brought in IFS too into this conversation, because it's
Yeah.
so important.
And it's such a beautiful, compassionate, not pathologizing, and pretty comprehensive approach to doing that deep healing. Maybe especially of the things that our protective parts have encouraged us forever, maybe even without us being so consciously aware of it, not to look at, right? You know, it's funny you bring up the shadow concept, because I've always felt that that's sort of just too ephemeral, too not practical to know kind of what to do with that. And many people echo that same sentiment to me too. And I really think of shadow work really as parts work. I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about the
It's the same.
same, but
Mhm.
parts work is so much more practical. It's weird. You have to accept the premise that we're all one and many. If you can accept that and get beyond the weirdness of that we're all essentially multiple, but not in a pathological way, right? I mean, our fragmented systems can reach pathological states, extreme states. Of course, that's real, but we're all naturally multiple.
Mhm.
is the premise that has to be accepted. If one can accept that and just be curious about where that could lead, I know firsthand it can lead to the deepest, most profound healing of what many would call our shadow, our disavowed aspects, which are really just usually parts that are stuck way back in time, overflowing with burdens of emotional pain, extreme beliefs, and then often cultural and even ancestral and generational patterns and burdens, limiting beliefs and whatnot, all of which can be remedied, through that model. And then it's not so much a kind of ephemeral, I'm trying to think of a better word for that, like just intangible, impractical shadow.
Esoteric.
Yeah.
Kind
How
of.
do
Yeah.
we
Can't get
get
your
to
arms around it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's how it's always felt to me. So weird as IFS is and multiplicity of mind is, it's also profound and it is practical in its own way. Because,
Yeah.
like, to make it really simple, there's the larger self, right? Which is, how do we know? That's that divine spark, that undamaged eternal essence of who we are. How do we know when we're in self or connected to self? Or how do we know when self is at the wheel? Is when we feel calm, clear, presence, patience, playfulness, curiosity, creativity, connectedness, courage. I could go on. But those are some of the compassion, of course, right? So curiosity and compassion are the sort of the big two that we're looking to establish before we go further with parts work. We want to get connection to self, drop into the heart is how I do it, spend some time there, try to just relax anything that's tense or tight or scared, hear those parts out if we need to. But we're just asking for space so we can connect to that divine spark, find our curiosity and our openness and presence, and then we go forth toward or invite to come forward any part of us that we may have an awareness of really kind of needs help or needs attention. And then we're off to the races, right?
I love that. And I love too, from a practical perspective, from a spiritual practical perspective, when you talked about the toroidal field, back when we were talking about MDLT,
Right.
and you were saying what you understand is there's this toroidal field that gets activated or enhanced, and
Yep.
then that's kind of they're moving their energy and their
Yeah.
healing, for lack of a better word, through that.
Exactly. Right.
What I understand and what I feel that I've experienced through the parts work
Yeah.
is that because there was this denial, this unwillingness to accept that part,
Right.
it was like I still had that part, even though I buried it,
Yeah.
but it was like frozen. It
Yes.
was not moving energy.
Yes.
It wasn't energy in motion. So
That's right.
from my own personal toroidal field, which we all have this toroidal field, and that is actual life force. It
Yes.
is what is animating us. It's how the movement of the life force within us as living beings. But because I had these, and I'm sure I still have some, because that's a thing. You don't, until you become aware of them, you don't notice them.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but the opportunity and the invitation was, if you can accept this and you can integrate it and you can, let it be a part of you, instead
Yes.
of saying, nope, that's not part of me. That didn't happen. That's not something I'm
Right.
willing to accept.
Right.
But to say, okay, come in here. You've got gifts for me. You're part of me. And
Absolutely.
then it moves.
Yes.
It becomes, it's enfolded into our energy, and it can flow.
That's right. Exactly.
And so
because
in all of
energy is either in one of two states, stuck or flowing.
right.
One or the other. So you're dead on. And really, this IFS sort of parts work approach, in a sense, is an energy psychology. It is an energy healing method. Absolutely. The way you became aware of it in that anecdote that you described, where you were in that kind of blissful, sort of semi-transcendent state, and all of a sudden, boom, comes that memory of that pain of what you experienced with shame or humiliation in the teenage years. So through the IFS lens, how would we look at that? I would say, well, that part that's been holding the bag of that pain all this time, and like you just said, yes, kind of frozen, stuck in time, which we can undo once we meet and work with that part. But that aside, my guess would be, my IFS informed hunch would be, that part knew that you were in an open, receptive state and chose that to try to get your attention. And it did. And then what did you notice next? What we would call a firefighter part, which is a protective part, swooped in to say, no, better left on, don't look over there. Nothing to see there. And like all protective parts, they're just trying to keep us safe, right? And their number one concern usually is that if we get too close to a part that's holding a lot of intense old pain, that we're going to be flooded and overwhelmed. So often the work, depending on how kind of good at their jobs or how many protectors one has, The real brilliance of IFS, of all the things that are brilliant about it to me, is that it seeks for permission from our protective parts before we go to any other deeper work, which is unlike any other psychological approach I know. EMDR does not do that. I think EMDR is learning to, but typically it just blasts right through protectors and goes right for the memory of the old pain. Hypnosis, hypnotherapy traditionally overrides protectors, and that's why it doesn't always take, right? So I don't want to go too off on that. It's not about comparing, but that's the real brilliance of IFS, is that if you were coming to me describing that experience, I would say, great, let's see if we can meet the part first that protects that teenage part. And let's work with that one, and let's hear its concerns. Let's let it know what we would be aiming to do and why that would be beneficial. But we're looking for permission first.
I love that. That gave me so many chills when you described it like that,
Yeah.
which is so resonant. And it really does soften the dealing with trauma when we see all of the parts are working in our favor.
Totally.
Even, these protective parts
Yep.
where, the fireman or the
Yeah.
judge or whatever we might have, where it's like, but they're kind of gatekeepers.
Totally.
Like, you might not be ready. Historically, you haven't been ready for this. So,
That's right.
and
Yes.
and so it's it's such a compassionate way to see the whole process, because we could go into it
Yes.
thinking like, why did this get buried? What has it been, how has it been holding me back this whole time, or whatever we might tell ourselves. But it's like, it's all this brilliant design to really help us and to nurture us along
Yes.
our
Completely.
awakening.
Completely.
in a
And
healthy
I've
way.
also found in my way of doing it transpersonally with those that are open to that, which frankly is most people who come to me these days, they want that. Why would they wouldn't think to say no to the inclusion of higher sources of love and God consciousness. So when we invite Mary in, or Sophia, or whoever's going to come in to hold space, by and large, there are some exceptions. Sometimes we cannot get protectors to relax back. It just can't. And that's part of it. It's just not for everyone. It's not always the right timing. We're not always going to strike gold with it, right? So it's not a miracle, because nothing is, right? It's not a miracle cure in that sense. But it is, what was I trying to say here? When we invite the higher sources in, I am finding over these years of doing that by and large, even the most rigid, hyper-vigilant protectors that want to just keep that gate closed and not let us go anywhere tend to feel more okay, let's just put it that way, with us going further. And I'm often finding that protective parts, which don't always themselves need to be unburdened, it's usually the ones they're protecting that do. I'm finding more and more that when Mary's with us, or whomever, that we start to learn that the protectors themselves are saying, well, I'm actually holding a lot of old shame. Can I get some help first? And then we can go to the one that I've been trying to keep safe all this time.
Oh, that's
If
fascinating.
that makes sense. So that's kind of just an interesting development of how it is just unfolding. And I think a lot of why my work with the higher sources in my therapeutic or MDLT context continues to unfold is because of all the work that I keep showing up for with Mary and the higher sources and myself, and all that they're doing to constantly refine, purify, and heal me, my whole mind, body, spirit complex system, so that I can be an increasingly powerful, potent kind of vessel, so that they can bring more of their presence and energy through, right? It's like constantly kind of increasing, which is just, what could
What a
beat
blessing.
that? I mean, that is what I'm here to do. So
Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
Well, Chris, I've loved this discussion. I feel like we've gone to so many beautiful places.
Yeah.
Tell us how people can connect with you.
Sure. And we didn't even get to all the Mount Shasta stuff and all that.
I
But
know.
some other
I
time.
know it.
Yeah.
Another time.
Some
Yeah.
other time. The easiest way to get in touch with me is just my website, therapyoutsidethebox.com. My Instagram, I'm pretty active on it. That's at Therapy Outside the Box. Those are the two easiest ways. I'm in Franklin, Tennessee, which is basically Nashville, but much of what I do, I can do with people virtually all over the world, just sort of on a coaching or consultation basis too. So
wonderful. Yeah, and our MDLT was on Zoom.
right.
So
yeah,
wonderful.
it's amazing
Well,
that
thank
can
you so
work that
much.
way, but it does.
I know, that's right.
Yeah.
It's very quantum.
Yes.
So you don't have to be in the same place.
Indeed. And
well, thank
congratulations
you so much.
to you on getting this award for your channel. That's so amazing.
Thank you.
I'm not surprised because you are such a bright light. So of course you're attracting goodness.
Well, thank you. That means so much. Thank you so much for being on, Chris. It's been such a joy.
Thank you, Kara. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Soul Elevation. If someone in your life would be inspired or uplifted by what you heard today, please take a moment to share it with them. These are the kinds of conversations that ripple out and elevate collective consciousness. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the powerful episodes ahead. Your presence, your energy, and your support truly help amplify this mission of raising frequency and anchoring in a more awakened humanity. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.